You have the CBI and the ED that are being misused only and only for the purpose of persecuting the opposition. You have bank accounts of opposition parties being frozen a month before the election. You are arresting leaders of all political parties. What remains of this democracy? Today, election rigging is happening via using the enforcement directorate. How is it not anything but election rigging if you are finishing off all opposition parties by using this one agency? केजरीवाल को तो इतना परेशान करके रखा हुआ है. She's like, देखो ऐसा क्या है वो जो नहीं करता. कहती मैं अभी आई हूँ, मैं बस में बिल्कुल फ्री आई हूँ, मेरे बच्चे का स्कूल इतना अच्छा है, मेरा बिजली बिल ज़ीरो आता है, उसके पीछे ही पड़े रहते हैं. You have Manish Sisodia's wife who is extremely unwell. You got the sequence of that wrong. First, BJP says Arvind Kejriwal is going to be arrested. They are the ones who start their press conferences by saying Kejriwal arrest hoga, Kejriwal jail jayega. Because fortunately we have well-wishers everywhere. What is the biggest fault line in Indian politics? I mean, there are many fault lines, but what is the biggest fault line in Indian democracy? And this is not just in the last decade, but if you were to look at it almost in the last 75 years, right? It is the question of who is it that the government represents? The people who vote for it or the people who are funding that political party in its elections? This really is one of the biggest fault lines, and not just of India, of any democracy. That you have governments who come into power and then they do not represent the interests of the people who have actually given them their vote. And I think that is really what makes Aam Aadmi Party different. That Aam Aadmi Party is voted to power by the Aam Aadmi, and we have continued in the last decade against all odds to deliver for the Aam Aadmi. I don't think that there is really, I mean, I think एक हिंदी में कहावत है ना, बच्चे की जान लोगे क्या? मतलब what more can be expected from a political party? Number one. Number two, you talked about the India Alliance and the fact that there are many parties in that whom we may have called corrupt in the past. Yes, that is absolutely true. But the fact of the matter is that the political scenario of the country 10 years back and today have changed dramatically. Even if you have to fight corruption, you do require a constitutional framework under which that fight can happen. You do require democratic institutions under whose framework that fight can happen. What is the crisis that the country is facing today? The crisis that the country is facing today is that all democratic institutions are being obliterated one by one, one by one, one by one. So you have the fact that the Supreme Court passes an order in its constitution bench, and within 8 days, an ordinance is brought in to overturn that. You have the fact that you have the election commission in the country, which is regarded as, which over the last 75 years has been seen across the world as an institution of impeccable integrity and neutrality. And now you have the government that brings in a bill which removes the Chief Justice of India and brings a government minister. What do you think is going to happen to the neutrality of the Election Commission? The electoral bonds that have just the decision that has just been turned over by the Supreme Court. When the figures finally came out, it was very clear that it was to skew the funding that is available to the party in power. You have the CBI and the ED that are being misused only and only for the purpose of persecuting the opposition. You have bank accounts of opposition parties being frozen a month before the election. You are arresting leaders of all political parties. What remains of this democracy? Today, election rigging is happening via using the enforcement directorate. How is it not anything but election rigging if you are finishing off all opposition parties by using this one agency? Chandigarh mayor elections, it just happened to be caught on CCTV camera. But otherwise, what is this horse trading? I remember when the last Karnataka elections happened. On one TV channel, Ram Madhav was present. Right? One anchor asked him, he's saying that we will banayenge. Then the anchor asked him, but you are short of the majority mark. To which his response, And I have to sort of compliment him for his openness. His response was, "Hamare paas Amit Shah hai." Now, what does that mean? Right? Why are all these MLAs coming from one party to the other? So I think there's two dimensions to this question of how, what is the impact of the fact that you have four senior people from the party, Manish Sisodia, Satyendra Jain, Sanjay Singh, Vijay Nair, all four of whom are in custody right now. One is, of course, the emotional and psychological dimension. Right? For all of us, they are very close colleagues. We have all worked together, built this party together over the last decades. So you have to realize the Aam Aadmi party is also different from other political parties because we are still a very small group of people, right? And it's almost like the startup where everyone has worked together day and night to bring the party to where it is today. So definitely it has a strong emotional effect on us as well. You have Manish Sisodia's wife who is extremely unwell. So we can see every day that her health is deteriorating. And we can see the fact that while in so many cases, and even in the so-called excise policy case, people are getting bail for much smaller conditions and reasons, he's not getting bail. So definitely we see that. You have Satyendra Jain, whose health over 1 year that he was in Tihar saw such incredible deterioration that the man could barely stand by the time he got his medical bail. I mean, he fell in his cell almost 8 months before he got bail. He was not able to get proper treatment because he was imprisoned. Right? So obviously this has a psychological impact on us. But at one level, it is also a matter of pride for us that despite this kind of intense persecution, Aam Aadmi Party leaders are not broken. You see that for much smaller persecution, leaders from political parties, from one opposition party or the other, ED registers a case, ED raids their residence and their office, and soon you see a few days later a press conference that they are joining BJP. And in that sense, it is only Aam Aadmi Party leaders who, despite the most intense political persecution, have been able to continue, who have continued to stand up to the BJP government in power. So I think that definitely is also a source of pride for us. What effect does it have on the governance and the party? Of course it has an effect. These are, which party do you have where sort of the number 2 leader, the number 3 leader, the number 4 leader are imprisoned? The fortunate thing is that we also have a lot of other young and very committed people within our party who have risen to the occasion, be it our MLAs, be it our people who have may have had backstage roles so far. Regarding your question about Aam Aadmi Party every few weeks saying that Arvind Kejriwal is being arrested, you got the sequence of that wrong. First, BJP says Arvind Kejriwal is going to be arrested. They are the ones who start their press conferences by saying Kejriwal arrest hoga, Kejriwal jail jayega. And as soon as they do their press conferences कि Kejriwal jail jayega, ED miraculously sends a summon the next day. And what does that say? It basically, I think it is, I don't need to spell it out. You know it, I know it, every person on the streets of the city and the country knows it. That today, both ED, CBI and all other agencies are just being used to persecute the opposition. So while the Aam Aadmi Party government has been questioned for the fact that we may give free electricity, free water, free bus rides for women, the entire healthcare system runs without any cost to the patients who go there. It's absolutely free of cost. All surgeries, all tests, all medicines, everything is free. So while we have been criticized for this on the one hand, the fact of the matter is that the AAP government in Delhi, despite giving all of these so-called freebies, is the only government across the country which has a fiscal surplus, number one. It is the only government across the country that has seen a 2.5x increase in its budget size in the last 10 years. It is the only government across the country that does not take loans to basically cover its expenditure and to increase its budget. So if we can provide these facilities to the citizens of Delhi while running a fiscally responsible government, why not? Number one. Number two, you're looking at it from one side in terms of what the outflow that is going out of the government. I think the other important thing that this needs to be seen as is that this really puts money into the pocket of the people of Delhi. So you have, especially at the bottom of the pyramid, and I won't even say the bottom of the pyramid, for almost 50% of the population of Delhi, they are saving thousands of rupees every month because of a zero electricity bill, zero water bill. Many people have shifted their children from private schools to government schools who are not paying expensive fees. You have day-to-day medical expenditure that is not costing them anything. So for all practical purposes, you are putting money in their pockets. Now, where does that money go? In fact, this time in the economic survey, we also presented the study that we got done, that almost 62% of the money that people save because of these subsidies, they spend. They spend it on buying better food for their children, they spend it on education for their children, buying supplementary books, for buying appliances for their households. So what does it do? This really infuses a liquidity into the economy. Once people have money in their pockets, it creates demand, and demand spurs economic growth. In fact, if you were to see, even after COVID, when the economy of the entire country went into recession, the economy shrunk, Delhi has been one of the states which has shown the fastest recovery in terms of the economy. And one of the major reasons for that is that the people of Delhi have money in their pockets. So it is not just that the government is providing subsidies or freebies, the money that is going into the citizens' pockets is giving them spending power. Now coming specifically to the Mukhyamantri Mahila Samman Yojana, which as you said has been the talking point of this time's budget. See, as it is, if you were to see the track record of the Aam Aadmi Party government, all our policies have been very women-oriented. If you were to see, they have been very oriented towards how a household is run. And so trying to resolve the day-to-day issues that people face in running their households. Now in an average household, it is the woman who has to run the expenses of her household. So right from sort of zero water bill, zero electricity bill, which reduces their expenditure, number one. Number two, if you were to look in terms of access to education, if any family had some money, they would send their son to a private school. They would send their daughter to a government school. Even today, 60% of students in Delhi government schools are actually girls. It's not a 50-50 ratio. Right? So when you improve government schools and improve the quality of education, who benefits the most? It's the girls who benefit the most. Number three, in terms of access to healthcare. Women on a day-to-day basis do not access healthcare because of its cost. Now, if you have like a viral fever or an upset stomach, a small ailment, right? You go to a private doctor, they'll charge you 500 rupees for consultation. They'll give you this long list of medicines on their, give you a list of prescriptions on their letter pad, which will cost 500 to 1000 rupees. They'll give you a list of tests which will cost at least 500 rupees. That means one minor ailment can cost up to 2000 rupees. So women who have to manage their household expenses never go to the doctor. And this is the reason why you see with women that small health issues become major health problems by the time they sort of get middle-aged and in their mid-40s and 50s, which could have been easily prevented. With mohalla clinics, in fact, there was a study by one organization a few years ago, and they found that 80% of patients who went to mohalla clinics were actually women. So you already have a very pro-women policy framework that the Delhi government has been following. Put money in her pocket, that is hers, that she can choose to spend as she wishes. So whether that's a college-going girl who might want extra books, whether that's a young girl who might be preparing for exams and wants coaching, or whether it's just a homemaker who wants to go out and watch a movie without having to ask anyone. This is a very different kind of empowerment. And as I said, that the money that is put into women's pockets is going to circulate in the economy. I think the people of Delhi understand. A few days back, there was this lady from Urban Clap who had come to my home to cut my mother's hair. Okay. And this conversation started over tea once the haircut was done. And she said, she's telling my mother she didn't know whose house it was and the fact that I was from Aadmi party, etc. So she finished my mother's haircut and she's sitting with her and having a cup of tea. And the conversation, as it tends to go in India, reached politics within a few minutes. And she said, इस बेचारे केजरीवाल को तो इतना परेशान करके रखा हुआ है. She's like, देखो, ऐसा क्या है वो जो नहीं करता? कहती मैं अभी आई हूँ, मैं बस में बिल्कुल फ्री आई हूँ, मेरे बच्चे का स्कूल इतना अच्छा है, मेरा बिजली बिल 0 आता है, उसके पीछे ही पड़े रहते हैं. And my mother was telling me that that lady literally had tears in her eyes in defense of Arvind Kejriwal, right? And so the people of Delhi understand, and I'll tell you the reason they understand. In this budget, when we placed this budget before the assembly, so not only did we present the budget for 2024-25, I also laid almost like a report card of the last 9 years of what our government has done. And even when I was preparing that budget speech myself, I mean, it just sunk in how much the lives of people have changed in the last 10 years. Now, I've lived in Delhi all of my life. I don't know about you. I mean, power cuts were a way of life. I remember we used to have these hand fans. And then we used to keep sort of trying to cool ourselves with that. And long calls to Desu. But even after Desu, 2014, the summer of 2014, there were 8-hour-long power cuts. Electricity was so expensive that for a lower middle class family, there was a point of time at which you had to almost reduce other expenditure to pay your power bills. Water tankers and fights over water tankers were a way of life for at least 1/3 of the city. And who would pay the price of that the most? Women and girls, who would from early morning start queuing up outside their slums, unauthorized colonies with 2-3 canisters in their hands, and spend at least 3-4 hours of their day trying to just get that 500-700 liters of water for their entire family. You look at children who are going into government schools. You look at women who would not be able to access healthcare, not be able to step out to their homes. We have this Mukhyamantri Tirth Yatra Yojana, and almost 90% of the senior citizens who go off for that are women coming from lower class backgrounds. They would never have been able to make this Tirth Yatra despite wanting to, because their families would not have been able to pay for it. So the lives of people in Delhi have changed in the last 10 years. And people feel it. And that is the reason why, despite all problems, right, despite the fact that we are in constant tussle with the central government, despite the fact that many of our policies are not able to reach their fruition, despite the fact that they may take more time, the people of Delhi do staunchly stand behind Arvind Kejriwal.